And we are live. Welcome back to day 3, live free agency reactions over here on Pistons Jack. You guys don't care about me though. I don't even really need to do an intro. But we got Kyle Metz here. As you can see along the bottom, please go follow Kyle at Kyle Metz23 on Twitter. And I think you're still on Blue Sky. Kyle just hit
I
the
need to
1K
start posting
mark.
more there.
Kyle just hit 1,000 followers on Twitter. Still criminally underfollow, guys. So please go follow, support him. I was just saying to him, his Twitter feed has been my go-to the past week or so. So, Kyle, thanks so much for jumping on. We're going to go here for like 15, 20 minutes, and we're just going to react to Amari Sankofa, the second from the Detroit Free Press's report that the Pistons are in fact going to engage on a sign and trade in the Dennis Schröder signing to the Kings. But that's enough for me, Kyle. Can you just explain this news, and then we'll get into what this means? And guys, for those joining in the chat, if you have questions for Kyle, put those in now and we'll hit those at the end or as I see fit. But yeah, Kyle, your time to cook.
Yeah. Well, okay. So there's a lot going on. This, I couldn't say is entirely surprising. I've been telling you guys for a couple of days now that was still very much in the works, according to some of the sources that I have access to, which is not many, guys, but I got 1,000 followers and I have sources now, so that's crazy. But this is not about me. So, okay. So one thing this does confirm is that they are operating an over the cap team. They cannot do this as an under the cap team because Schröder's cap hold was too large to get them under the cap to do stuff. So, which is fine. It doesn't really change anything functionally. And we talked about this a little yesterday on stream, but this does confirm that they're operating as over the cap team. And I did some other stuff today. If you're following me, you'll see. I've already tweeted this out. Did some digging, and the Paul Reed is indeed a bird rights signing. They had full bird rights on him because they picked him up off of waivers, which means they get to keep his bird rights. Although they waived him, he cleared waivers and then signed right back with a team without going to another team, which means they get to maintain those rights. And so all that being said, what that means is they're able to sign him over the cap without using their biannual. So they also have their biannual exception, which is $5.1 million, as a trade exception or a signing way to sign players. That's what we're here to talk about, but just that's something that those are the things that are now confirmed based on this information. We don't know what it's going to cost them. I'm assuming they're probably going to have to send out a second to the Kings. I doubt they would send more than 2 or more than 1 unless it's like this makes the deal possible for a Trey Murphy, for a Anthony Simons, whatever. We'll get into names, but for now, assume it's probably one of the seconds, just to help the Kings say, hey, thanks for doing us a favor. Maybe it's cash. We're already hard capped at the first apron with other things, so like it could just be cash. So we'll see what that comes of that. But that's what we know so far.
Yeah. And guys, I just really want to reiterate, please go follow Kyle on Twitter because all of this stuff, or some of it, at least the important stuff he just went through there, is all on his Twitter timeline. So at KyleMetz23, please go follow him, keep you updated. But Kyle, I think what a lot of people are going to pivot to now is, I think everyone just wants to know, what are the players that contract-wise, I don't believe any of these names are reportedly linked to the Pistons, but contract-wise are fit into this sign and trade with Dennis Schröder that they can potentially bring back.
Yeah. I was getting buzzed, so I want to make sure it wasn't updates from
you're good.
Important. Okay, so yeah, I tweeted out a list of names that fit into the 22.6. So again, to recap, because I don't know if we actually said what we were even talking about. Maybe you did. I wasn't paying attention. Amari Sankofa, Amari Sankofa the second tweeted out that confirming that there is the sign and trade with Dennis Schröder, which means either the Pistons will basically, they're sending out 14.1. They're saying 14.3, so I'm not sure where they're getting that number. It doesn't quite matter yet. let's say 14.1, because I know that one actually works. So they're sending the $14.1 million salary in Schröder to the Kings. And the Kings currently will be taking him into their MLE unless one of their players comes out in the deal. Malik Monk was rumored before. That I've heard is dead. But there's still other guys on the roster. For example, Keegan Murray would fit as someone coming back. And so assuming the Kings aren't sending anybody out and they're just giving us this trade exception, what that means is if they expand the deal to include another team, they can take back $22.6 million in salary. If that doesn't happen, then they can take the $14.1 million TPE, hold it, and do a separate deal. And most likely July 6th is the de facto deadline for that, because the Kings are going to want to make this official as soon as it's possible to, which is July 6th. So the Pistons have about 4 more days to find another trade partner to rope this in to increase the amount that they can bring in. And the reason why they're able to do that, because it's called an expanded trade exception, which means, and that's that thing you guys are familiar with, you can take in like $8.5 million more, depending on, there's different bands. So if it's like less than that, it's 200%. If it's 8.5 to 19 or 20 million, it's 8.5 million. And then above that, it's like 125% plus 250,000. So that's where we're getting that 8.5 million number. That's how we get to 22.6 million. So that's the framework. That's all the nerd math stuff. So let's get to names. So basically anyone who makes less than 22.6 million can come back in the deal. They can also
just to jump
combine
in there.
multiple players.
Okay. Yeah. So this is where, because I can see a lot of John Collins in the chat. So John Collins, I believe, is he around
like 26 million?
Okay,
like
so
26 million, I think.
Yeah, we've spoken about him. In order to get the salary to work for John Collins, the Pistons would have to send out Sasa and probably Bobby Klintman. Am I correct in that? From what we discussed?
Yeah. Or Duran or Ivy, but yes, at minimum, Sasser and Klintman would also have to go out on that deal.
Yeah. So, because I know that's a big name that I know people are very, very interested in. But I just wanted to jump in there and highlight him so I can see him in the chat. But other names potentially around the league. I saw you did have a list posted on Twitter for some forward names.
Yeah, let me see if I can pull up my list here.
I've got the one here of the forwards that you tweeted out, so I'll go quickly through this. So some potential, I think these names, and Kyle, correct me if I'm wrong, but these would be like, we don't need to add extra players. There's Kyle Kuzma, Dylan Brooks, Harrison Barnes, Rui Hashim. Sorry, I'm watching that. You know what I'm talking about. Patrick Williams, Keldon Johnson from the Spurs, Jonathan Isaac, PJ Washington, and Obi Toppin. 2 names I love for the Pistons at the 4. Jared Vanderbilt from the Lakers, and then we already discussed Keegan Murray. So just to reiterate, those are names the Pistons wouldn't have to send out any more players or contracts. You could make that clean swap from 20 million or less.
And that's not comprehensive. There are other guys like Sam Hauser. There are other people, Jonathan Kuminga, like depending on what he gets signed for, they could expand that. So that's not comprehensive, but those are some guys that like make enough money that would make sense. Their team might want to move them into this deal.
Yeah. And I can see some people here still asking about Malik Monk. Kyle, they can still do the Malik Monk. It just, with the players they've added, Levert and Robinson, might be a bit of a shock to add another player that plays at the 2 or.
Yeah, Monk is definitely possible, but the reality is if they wanted Monk, it would have already been done. And what I heard was the Monk deal was agreed upon already, and the Kings were waiting for Trajan. And Trajan, I think, from what I understand, again, this is now putting pieces together, he kind of backed away from that option and decided to pivot to Duncan Robinson instead, and then just try to keep this TP for something else. I think they were trying to find a suitor for Monk, and no one wanted him. And so this way, and because the Kings were able to make the Valanciunas move, they didn't need to move Monk in order to stay under the luxury tax to take Schröder back. So that's why the Monk thing kind of fell apart.
To to reiterate as well, from the Kings' point of view, because I think it is important for people to understand, the Kings' incentive to do this is that if they pull this off, they can still use their mid-level on another player. Is that correct? Is that the thinking for them?
Only if they send someone else out on the deal, which probably isn't going to happen. So at this point, it would be, hey, we're going to give you a second or two to do us a favor, and make this a sign and trade, even though they don't have to.
Okay.
So that's kind of where we're at this point.
And what if they sent a player? So say this opens up to a 3-team. What if they sent a player to the third team? Does that work for them to get that mid-level?
Yeah. So that's the interesting thing here. And this is something that I've been playing around with since this morning. I think this is in a Stein report, that Miami's interested in DeRozan. So the funny thing about all of this is that the DeRozan deal could actually fit into the Duncan Robinson deal as a sign and trade. So because depending on how they structure the contract, I think as long as they front load the Robinson contract, it's just enough money. So basically what it means is the Pistons, instead of doing like 16 million flat, they would do like 16.5 million the first year with 5% decreases, which would give them, that would be like just enough money going out for Miami to bring in DeRozan into that deal. And then that would be a separate deal. Most likely they could expand it to a 14 trade where it's all one thing. Because basically the way trades work, it doesn't make any sense to me, but basically the way trades work is every team can structure however is best for them. So from the Kings perspective, it could be all one 4-team deal that would actually end up letting them keep their mid-level exception. And they could actually pull Russell Westbrook into that immediately too, because DeRozan makes enough money. And so they can do that. And the Pistons can say, well, we need this to be 2 separate deals, because otherwise we lose the 8.5 million. We need both 8.5 millions that we want to use. Like we would. So the NBA is weird, but it works that way. So like you could see this expand into, no, DeRozan would go to Miami.
Yeah.
And the Tech to Miami, and well, because Tech is going there, so that might get funky. So maybe it doesn't quite work the way I'm thinking. I don't fully remember.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
It wasn't DeRozan to the Pistons, though, clearly. It was
DeRozan to Miami. Tech would have to go to a 3rd team. That's what it would be if Miami would ship Tech back to the Kings or whatever. Like, but those are probably 2 separate deals.
Let's quickly hit a couple of questions here, because I can see some cap-related ones. Just for you, Kyle. From Alec, can they add the biannual exception to get to 27 million?
No, you cannot aggregate the exceptions. Okay, we're good. No, you can't aggregate exceptions. So that would just be another player.
Yeah.
The exceptions, you can put more than one player into that exception, but you can't aggregate it to something else.
Got you. All right, another one here from Sports Time. How long do they have to make the decision on said player? I think we hit on this, but how long?
July 6th.
July 6th
is the de facto deadline. The Kings could let them do it longer, but I would be surprised, especially because they already balked at the Monk thing. I don't think there's like a ton of, we really want to make this work for you, because they'll want to have their business wrapped up. So July 6th is probably the date you'll want to look for.
So what is the date? Must be July 2nd still for you.
Yeah, 2nd here. So
yeah,
I think it's like midnight on the 6th. So like, give or take 3 more days.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Mystery team here. I assume this might have been in relation to one of your tweets potentially. Were you serious about Ivy wanting 34 million?
That's what I'm hearing. And that is on par with what Jalen Green got. And so I think he's saying Jalen Green is the 4.
Yeah.
Because he's better than Jalen Green. He's been more consistent than Jalen Green. And so, and I honestly think if he was, that's like just pure numbers money wise. If you're going percentage of the cap, he's probably pushing for 39 million a year over the course of 3 years. Like if he actually gets the Jalen Green deal in terms of percentage of the cap, that's $39 million annual value. So I don't think he needs that. I think they're closer to the 34 million, but that's what I think he wants.
I mean, I'm not I'm not too surprised. I recall when you and I were talking about this, like around the trade deadline, we were saying 30 million is probably the minimum. And you've
Yeah.
always mentioned the Jalen Green deal, but it does just sound like a lot when you first read it. But I think it depends how much you believe in Ivy. If you don't believe in him,
Yeah.
obviously you're going to think this is a lot. But all right,
Yeah,
I'm
and that's
glad
it's like 20% of the cap. So if he's one of your starters, that totally makes sense.
yeah.
And he's going to want that. So
That all right. There was one other here from Ryan. I think we've kind of spoken on it, but highlighted here. My understanding, nobody wants Monk, so Pistons can't get Obi, and Pacers get Monk. So I'm assuming this is a three-team trade. Would the Pacers, Kings, and Pistons be able to do that type of three-team where we get Obi, Pacers got Monk? I assume this
essentially,
is
I'm sure this has already been discussed. That's my point is they don't need to send Monk out at all to get Obi Toppin. Like
yeah,
Monk doesn't need to go anywhere. And in fact, Monk going somewhere else actually makes the deal harder because
yeah,
in this scenario, the Pistons offer immediate cap room to whoever they're trading with.
yeah,
So, for example, if they want to get off Obi Toppin entirely without sending any money out, they can send Obi to Detroit. Then the Pacers create their own player exception to use for a different deal later, or just take the cap savings for now and run. And that's at this time of year, it's like kind of nice. Like teams who need to get out from some salary like that, this is a way they can do that.
yeah.
So yeah, Monk doesn't need to be involved at all, and in fact, he probably won't be, and it's better that he's not. So
Okay, awesome. We'll probably go another 4 minutes here, guys. So quickly get your questions in. But just to wrap this up, Kyle, feels like this is the Pistons' best way to address the holes they have in the front court. It feels like at the moment. Hence why I think forwards are the best players to look at. I'm not sure if you tweeted this out, so you don't need to respond to this, but is there any names you've heard, or is it just don't have to even say names? More so, are they targeting a specific position with this? Is there a gut feel? To
I
me,
have
that's
not
just
heard anything. I have not heard anything in terms of what they're actually looking for. This is just me saying if
yeah,
they're going to do this, this is their chance.
yeah,
So the other thing I didn't tweet out, but just I think I sent you. Maybe we talked about before. If they send out Sasser in the deal, that pushes them up to the $25.5 million mark, and so that guys like Miles Bridges is an option, and Trey Murphy become doable salary wise. Jaden McDaniels, I don't think those guys are actually available. But it would get you there salary wise. And so
yeah,
let's say for some reason New Orleans was trying to save some money or do something else, and they just want to get off Murphy's money and get picks back instead of players. That's a route you could go, and you send Sasser back to Troy and New Orleans, maybe,
yeah.
or he goes back to Sacramento, which doesn't make sense. But yeah, let's say they send Sasser to New Orleans, and that lets them trade a $23 million traded player exception, and New Orleans get farther away from the tax line, gives them some flexibility to potentially like not have a million forwards that they need to play. Again, I don't think it's realistic, but if the Pistons wanted to push a move in with several firsts, maybe three
Yeah.
firsts and $23 million in shedded salary for Trey
It's
Murphy is enough.
I mean, like, because whenever we've discussed Trey Murphy, it's always like, which of the young guys is going back, everything else. This is like the perfect way to get a player like that and still retain your 5 guys that you're really invested in. Not that you're going to be able to pay them and Trey Murphy in the future, but just for this season alone, that would be huge. But I understand that's probably unlikely. Is there anything else, Kyle? Is there any other news? Because, like I said, it's still the morning for me, so I haven't had a full chance to check. Is there any other news Pistons related out of today? I know this is the massive piece, but
I don't
I
think
haven't.
so. We haven't gotten like any more clarity on what Duncan's contract will be, and we probably won't
Yeah,
until the 6th. This is a lot of clarity either way. We know they're over the cap. That tells us what they have left. We covered Paul Reed's stuff. So yeah, I think we're in a pretty good spot here.
yeah,
In terms of like we've covered everything.
yeah,
Again, people get mad at me for putting Ivy trades together. I'll just address that now. they don't have a good way to replace Duran right now. A lot of the center market's dried up. And Duran's probably going to come on a cheaper extension than Ivy is. I think Ivy's more worth whatever extension you give him than Duran. I'd much rather trade Duran. Do not get me wrong. But Ivy makes more, and Ivy is less likely to extend. And with the guards they have on the team, he's the easiest to replace. And so if Ivy gets sent out in this deal, for example, they can create 32.8 million or something, 32.9. So that's a big salary that they can go get for a player that might fit better than he does in theory.
Yeah.
So that's just something, to realize if they can send Ivy to the Jazz and get 2 first-round picks and John Collins, are we mad about that? If they can,
look, it certainly sets you up to really make a big time move, trade deadline, or
right.
In the very near future. Okay, I think we've hit on it all really well. I think it's fair to say this is like it feels like this is going to be whatever happens in this sign and trade is going to be whether or not we determine this offseason a huge success or not huge, a success or maybe potentially some sort of missed opportunity. Because I think the consensus is right now from podcasts I'm listening to, the Pistons they're kind of still, it's not bad, it's not great, maybe a little bit. They've gotten maybe potentially a little bit worse. Some people think a tiny bit better. So this is really the move that I think is going to determine the success of just how this offseason looks.
Right. This has the potential to be a big swing for a position of need. This has the potential just to be another tool in the tool belt to keep optionality, which Trajan loves. And so even if it just means they're going into the season with another exception to use, that's great. Which is definitely more likely than that they find some, one of these $20 million guys to come in. But hey, maybe the Suns don't really want Dylan Brooks. Do we like him? I don't know.
Say what you want about Dylan Brooks. As soon as he goes to the Rockets, they get they almost make the playoffs in year 1 and they were just 2 seed. Say what you want about him.
That would be doubling down on the Pistons identity for sure to bring in Dylan Brooks there. And I think the Keldon Johnson and the Harrison Barnes is an interesting thing to look at because they have 2 of them that kind of do the same thing.
Yeah.
So maybe that's a way that they Spurs finagle some things. So I know someone asked me who my favorite is out of the list. I don't know if I have a favorite. I do like Keegan Murray, but then I think that's weird. We talked about that yesterday. So
with the contract, well, I think that's worth just quickly bringing up.
Yeah.
Again,
Keegan Murray would create 3 lottery picks from the same draft that all need extended this summer. And so I think if they're doing that again, people are going to think I hate Ivy. I love Ivy. He's actually one of my favorite.
I was going to jump in and say that before. You are very pro Ivy and have been the entire time. I remember when we drafted him when we started the home court. You have been pro Ivy since the day we got him.
Yeah. So it's just reading the read the writing on the wall a little bit is where I'm coming from. But yeah, I think Harrison Barnes could be a good filler. And then I like PJ Washington as well. And so Ryan asked who's on the tax out of the list. I actually don't know. That'd be a really good next project for me to go through, who's actually desperate to get off some money. I have not done that number yet. And so I know the Celtics are for Sam Hauser, and he just signed that deal. So that could be an interesting one too. But I'll try to work on that maybe later tomorrow and kind of narrow down this list of who I think is most likely. This is more of a scatter shot, get people excited, and here's what I'm looking at before I dive in. So
I love it. Well, I think that's going to do it, guys. I know Kyle's got a family to look after, so I don't want to keep him too much longer. But Kyle, I think just final thing, I think it's fair to say this might take a day or so to play out. I mean, it could happen any moment.
For sure. It will most likely take a day or 2. And even then, I think the most likely thing still is that they just take the TPE into the season. that's still the most likely option, and that's still a good option. And so we can be excited regardless of what it turns out. But hopefully we're back on here tomorrow talking about Trey Murphy, the swing for Trey Murphy. And
I would love it. I've been loving these shows with you, man. I really appreciate you making the time. I think the communities, we're very lucky to have you. So, guys, please go follow Kyle on Twitter at KyleMets23. I've retweeted a heap of his posts. If you follow me on Twitter, I saw Q just shouted you out. So, guys, at KyleMets23, please go support him. And Kyle, I know that people have been loving these streams and having you on. So, thank you for coming up here and doing your best Kobe impersonation. I'm slitting you ISO.
Hey, it's a joy and a privilege. So let's hope Ivy goes to 25 points per game this year, and we can talk about him getting that $40 million extension that he deserves, rather than having to put him in trade conversation.
I love it. Well, guys, that's going to do it for today's show. If something happens, if Kyle has the time, we will jump back on tomorrow. So stick with us here. But thank you, everyone, for tuning in. I really appreciate the support. And final thing, please go support Kyle at KyleMets23 on Twitter. But that's going to do it for today's show. We'll be back tomorrow. As always, go Pistons.